Scientists: 99.8% probability coronavirus originated from laboratory. Recently, scientist Dr. Stephen Quay published a 193-page paper proving that the coronavirus originated in a laboratory.
I am Dr. Stephen Quay, and this is an introduction to my paper. A Bayesian analysis concludes beyond a reasonable doubt that SARS-CoV-2 is not a natural zoonosis, but instead is laboratory-derived.
His conclusions coincide with those of Yanli Meng, a Chinese virologist.
From my first report, I can present the solid scientific evidence to our audience that this virus, COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus, actually is not from nature. It is a man-made virus created in the lab based on the China military discovered and owned the very unique bat coronavirus, which cannot affect people, but after the modification becomes a very harmful virus at now.
Quay conducted a systematic study based on 26 different independent facts and evidence. He questioned the supposed 98.2% likelihood that the virus had come from animal transmission or jumped from nature, and the tiny 1.2% probability that it had come from a laboratory. The scientists ultimately concluded that there was a 99.8% probability of SARS-CoV-2 coming from a laboratory and only a 0.2% chance it came from nature.
In addition, the paper contains an analysis of adenovirus vaccine sequences that were found in lavage specimens from 5 patients with COVID in December 2019, analyzed by the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And as you can see in the bars here, the sequence reads, the contiguous sequence reads, run from the adenovirus section through and into the immunogen and then into the 3' end of the adenovirus. So this is very strong evidence that an adenovirus was present in these early patients.
According to Quay, copies of the paper were sent to 26 scientists around the world.
So I sent it out to 26 esteemed scientists in the world, all the members of the WHO team, all the members of the Lancet Commission, and Dr. Shi at the Wuhan Institute, and the doctors on some of the most prominent papers there. I've gotten some feedback. I've agreed to kind of keep it confidential.
Dr. Quay's conclusions coincide with those of Yanli Meng, a Chinese virologist who fled to the United States.
Based on the virus genome, it's basically like our fingerprint. So you can see the very unusual characters in their genome. So he created those things like basically a cow has deer's head, has rabbit's ear, and also have monkey's hand. So they can never get it from the nature. And there were evidence left in the genome. This is created in the lab. This is from that template owned by China military. Yes, of course, it's intentionally. And even no need more evidence, you already can see what they try to cover up from the early beginning, as I reviewed in different medias before, and also what else they have done, like making the fabricated virus to throw out the natural origin theory, censorship, everything that every evidence point to the lab origins, and also clearly try to make people like me want to talk about the truth get disappeared.
Members of the House still contract COVID after vaccination. According to the Boston Herald, Democratic member of the U.S. House of Representatives Stephen Lynch tested positive for COVID-19 after receiving a second dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Lynch's spokeswoman, Molly Rose Tarpey, said Lynch received the positive test results after a staff member in the congressman's Boston office tested positive. Lynch had already received a second dose of the Pfizer vaccine and tested negative for COVID-19 before attending the inauguration of President Joe Biden. She said Lynch is not showing symptoms and feels fine, but will be isolated just in case. Davidson Hamer, an infectious disease specialist at Boston University, said Lynch received a positive test result after the second vaccination, suggesting that there are still unknowns surrounding the sought-after shots. Hamer also said, "Neither the Pfizer nor Moderna vaccine is 100% protective based on the studies that were done. They're both about 95% effective against symptomatic infections. However, it is not scientifically clear how the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines prevent asymptomatic infections and how they prevent transmission." To date, dozens of members of Congress have tested positive for COVID-19 in the U.S. Luke Letlow, a Republican and newly elected congressman from Louisiana, died of complications after contracting the virus. Biden admin sued for halting oil and gas leases. On January 27th, Western Energy Alliance, a group representing fossil fuel producers on federal lands, filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court in Wyoming against the Biden administration. They said that Biden overstepped his authority with the recent order to halt oil and gas leasing on federal lands and waters. Kathleen Scamma, president of the alliance, said in a statement that Biden's executive order violates the Mineral Leasing Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, and the Federal Lands Policy and Management Act, and is both arbitrary and capricious. The law is clear. Presidents don't have the authority to ban leasing on public lands. All Americans own the oil and natural gas beneath public lands, and Congress has directed them to be responsibly developed on their behalf, said Scamma. Biden's order to halt new oil or natural gas leasing on federal land has also prompted widespread anxiety in New Mexico, one of the nation's top energy producers. In New Mexico, half of the oil and gas production is on federal land and amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars in royalties each year. According to Steve Pearce, chairman of the New Mexico Republican Party, under Biden's actions, roughly 50,000 jobs could be lost in the state. There could be potentially $3.5 billion in losses, as most of the state's core production comes from federal lands, and oil and gas provide about 40% of the revenue for the state's budget. This was a very political decision to pay off supporters, Pearce said. It's one that reeks of bad judgment and bad economic policy. 40 cents out of every dollar comes from oil and gas. Industry leaders and congressmen are concerned that Biden's order to halt oil and gas leasing on federal lands would not only harm the U.S. economy and eliminate jobs, but also weaken the U.S. national energy security and independence by forcing the entire country to be more reliant on foreign energy. In the past 4 years, the United States under the Trump administration became the world's top producer of oil and maintained its position as the top global producer of natural gas. In 2019, the country became energy independent and a net exporter of petroleum products for the first time since 1949. It is now in its 5th consecutive year as a net exporter of natural gas. According to the Institute for Energy Research, total U.S. energy production increased by 5.7% in 2019, while U.S. energy demand fell by 0.9%. Since Joe Biden has taken office, moves like rejoining the Paris Agreement on climate change and revoking a permit for the Keystone XL pipeline have created a sharp break from President Trump's efforts to push American energy independence by maximizing fossil fuel production. In a statement, Dan Natz of Independent Petroleum Association of America said, "Do not be fooled. This is a ban on drilling. The Biden administration's plan to obliterate the jobs of American oil and gas explorers and producers has been on clear display. It's going to force us to buy more oil from nations that support terrorism," said New Mexico Republican Steve Pearce. He also warned America would face tremendous shortages. Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers from Washington, a member of the GOP's leadership in the House, said in a statement, "Pie-in-the-sky government mandates and directives that restrict our mining, oil, and gas industries adversely impact our energy security and independence." In a letter to Biden on January 27th, Democratic Representatives Vicente Gonzalez and 3 others called Biden's order far-reaching and demanded he resigned it. arguing that banning responsible energy leasing would eliminate jobs, reduce economic output, increase budgetary shortfalls, and increase crude imports from foreign countries, causing a weakening of the U.S. national security apparatus as it pertains to American energy independence. Representative Marjorie Greene, I won't back down. Republican Representative Marjorie Greene from Georgia said on Saturday, January 30th, that she had received a call from President Donald Trump, during which he expressed his support. I had a great call with my all-time favorite POTUS, President Trump, she wrote in a string of tweets. I'm so grateful for his support, and more importantly, the people of this country are absolutely 100% loyal to him because he is 100% loyal to the people and America first. Greene is a newly elected congresswoman and a staunch supporter of Trump's policies as president. She announced on January 21st that she had filed articles of impeachment against Joe Biden.
Just filed articles of impeachment on President Joe Biden. We'll see how this goes.
According to a statement from Greene's office, the articles of impeachment concern Biden's alleged actions involving a quid pro quo deal in Ukraine and alleged abuse of power by allowing his son, Hunter Biden, to siphon off cash from America's greatest enemies, Russia and China. After Greene's announcement, Democrats have hyped up attacks against her. Within a week, a Democrat said that he plans to introduce a resolution to expel Greene, citing numerous reports revealing her repeated endorsements of sedition, domestic terrorism, and political violence. In a statement released on January 29th, Representative Greene responded, "Every attack, every lie, every smear strengthens my base of support at home and across the country because people know the truth and are fed up with the lies." She continued on Twitter the next day, "I won't back down, I'll never apologize, and I'll always keep fighting for the people. For me, it's America first." She also said that America is facing an enemy within. And that enemy is a poisonous rot of socialist policies and America last sellouts who are pompous hypocrites that believe they are untouchable elites.